Welcome back to the Countdown Fan Podcast, where we are always counting it down to MLB Opening Day 2025. Welcome to episode 6 of the Countdown, and today we have two very special Tigers fans here with us. Welcome, Brayden Peace and Conner Long. Awesome. Thank you, fellas, for joining us today. And we're going to get right into the action as we always do. Brayden, you've joined us before, looking a little bit different. I like the scruff. I'm loving the longer hair. Just got to put it out there just in case our viewers didn't recognize you. But guys, since Brayden, you've done it before, we'll start with you. Give us a little bit of a background. Tell our fans why they should or shouldn't listen to your Tigers fan opinions.
Man, okay. I mean, I've been a Tigers fan my whole life. I would consider myself a pretty big fan. I think both of you guys can attest to that, especially the other Conner who we have on as a guest today. From living with me all summer, he got to deal with all the, I would consider myself a pretty optimistic fan. I think that he would also attest to that. There were some dark times throughout this season. I was one of few, I think, who continued to kind of believe the whole way. So that being said, huge fan of the team. I feel like I've been following the team very closely since I was a young kid. So a lot of sentimental attachment there too. But yeah, I consider myself a very passionate Tigers fan for sure.
All right. I love to hear it. And then flipping it over to you, my fellow Conner, what is some background on your Tigers fandom and maybe kind of how you root for the team?
Well, I actually grew up in Lansing, Michigan, which is probably about an hour and some change from Detroit. So since I was a little kid, I was going to Tigers games, probably all the way from 5 to, through 13. And I actually have never actually seen the Tigers lose a game at home, which is, pretty cool to say because, like Brayden said, we have had a lot of tough, times in the past and well, actually recently as well. But, I'm actually very optimistic about, what we have, going into next year. We had a really good season unexpectedly, to be honest. But, we had the really good tournament run. We went through the ALDS, ended up losing to the Guardians, but we're not going to really talk about that. I've actually always been a really big Tigers fan. Love guys like, Cabrera, obviously, Prince Fielder, Torrey Hunter, a lot of those guys, Victor Martinez. So I feel like I'm, a pretty passionate fan. And like I said, I'm just really looking forward to, what we have in store for the future. Definitely.
And I can attest to that. Conner and I watched a shit ton of Tigers baseball this summer.
Yeah.
Living in the old employee housing down there in Pigeon Forge. So yeah.
For some more background for whoever's listening and viewing, the three of us know each other because we just interned this past summer with Ripken Baseball. We were able to be living in the same dorms together. We got real close working together every day and did a whole lot of talking sports, watched a whole lot of Tigers baseball. I was able to see how these guys bonded over their Detroit roots, and it was fun to watch. Brayden was putting on those games on his phone all the way towards the end of the playoffs. But all right, fellas, I guess, to kind of touch a little bit more on 2024 and how unexpectedly great the Tigers ended up. If you ask A.J. Hinch at the end of the year, he told you, man. He told everybody that they have to be prepared for everything because that's what it's going to take for this team to get to where they want to go. So can you guys give us a one-sentence headline kind of wrapping up 2024 and what you guys were able to see? Conner, let's start with you.
I would say that the Tigers went from being a chaser to being one of the chase with tons of optimism for the future. Like I said, we kind of came out of nowhere, didn't really have a lot of expectations, had a lot of, young players that were, had a lot of upside, going into last year, I would say, but, hadn't really been proven. But I feel like, we definitely caught a lot of people's attention, caught a lot of teams by surprise. And, now we're, kind of similar to the Lions. We're kind of, making strides, in a positive direction, definitely for the future.
Yeah, we've got to keep building in the right direction, just like you mentioned those Lions have been able to do. And now it seems, like we were saying earlier before we started recording, if you turn on NFL Network, it's like everyone's saying the Lions are the best team in the NFL. But flipping it over to you, Brayden, what's your one-sentence headline wrapping up 2024 for the Tigers?
Thanks, AJ. Stick around, please. Need him bad. I mean, listen, without what AJ was able to do with the roster that he was, given this year, especially down the stretch with pitching, I mean, there's not too many managers in baseball that, number one, have the confidence in their guys to do something like that, but number two, have the intelligence and, are willing to take a risk like that. for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, down the stretch, I mean, the Tigers had 2 starting pitchers. They were going Skubal and Montero on back-to-back days, and then for 3 days in a row, they would use an opener, a bulk pitcher, and then just the rest of the bullpen. And the way that AJ was able to manage the pitching the whole year, and the whole goal of using an opener is obviously to have the opposite-handedness pitcher of the bulk guy start the game. That way, it's difficult for the opposing manager to set his lineup up. So your bulk guy essentially has to go through the top of the lineup one less time, which statistically speaking, when they go through the lineup the third time as starting pitcher, that's when they start to get hit around if you look at numbers. So AJ's always been a numbers guy. Like I said, he's always been a fairly intelligent individual. I mean, he figured out a way to cheat in Houston and didn't get caught for years and years. That, to me, is horrible, but I mean, it takes a really, a smart type of individual to facilitate something that, in-depth and thought out. But yeah, as far as him using the pitching this year, I think that is the reason that the Tigers were able to win so many games. And the offense came together down the stretch, I think, as well. But we had a lot of left-handed bats, so keeping guys like Ibanez on the bench who was just murdering lefties at the end of the year, had some huge ABs that, sent us to the playoffs. So I think we got a bright future, but a key part of that is going to be getting AJ to stick around. I mean, he's a 2-time World Series winning manager for a reason. Guy knows what he's talking about, and we're very lucky to have him in Detroit.
2-time World Series winner with an asterisk. Just saying.
One of them was legit.
Which one? Can you name
right,
them?
One of them.
Choosing both, putting it out there, clarifying.
Okay, all right. Well, even so, he didn't get caught until Mike Fiers got all upset and decided to hire everybody,
All right, we'll save that for the hot takes because you may have been dipping into the same pool that I was gonna jump into for the hot takes. But flipping it over to another part of what you were saying, the offense came together at the end. It was providing when it needed to, but obviously the consistency factor was not there. And on those deep stretches of the season, usually the guys you depend on to be consistent are the guys you pay in the off season. And unfortunately for the Tigers, the one guy that they've paid recently has been their least productive hitter, it seems, on a consistent basis. Javier Baez has not shown up to the party in Detroit yet, and the party is here. So, hey, if Javier Baez can make a quick flip turnaround with this team, man, the momentum would be insane because we know the kind of energy that this guy brings to ball clubs. But moving it back to the pitching side, this offseason hasn't been too much news out of the Tigers because they pretty much have the exact same team. But the big thing, Tariq Skubal winning the AL Cy Young. What did you guys think of that? Obviously well-deserved, seems pretty unanimous. Are we expecting this as the base level of Tariq Skubal for going forward? Brayden, what do you think?
I mean, to expect that, he was so elite this year, pitching Triple Crown. To expect that type of performance year in and year out, I think would be a little bit optimistic. But that being said, I think that Skubal is going to be a prolific elite arm at the top of hopefully our rotation. For in the future. Conner the other day sent me the post when he won Cy Young. You got to pay that man. So we're going to get into moves and things like that. But I think that one of the key things that the Tigers got to do, even versus adding new players, is you got to pay your studs, and Skubal is, he's a homegrown arm, wasn't a top prospect. Guys like that are tough to come by, man. So got to keep that guy, got to keep him in Detroit.
Yeah. What are you thinking about that award?
I
Connor?
totally agree
Seems
with
like
what
we're on
Brayden
it early.
said. So I think that Skubal is really the foundation of the team. Really, like you said, at the end of the year, especially, he really put the team on his back and, kind of just carried us all the way to the ALDS. And, he never, this is paraphrasing, he never really took a day off. He was always consistent, whenever we really needed him. And I feel like, that's definitely somebody that we need to make sure that, we keep in-house and, that we provide for him, because he's been providing for us. I believe that we're looking at a $80 million payroll for the Tigers to start going into the 2025 season. So that's just something to also keep in touch with as well. But, I definitely think that we have the pieces. Adding another, me and Conor were kind of talking about this a little bit before the call. But, I think, maybe adding maybe one or two more pieces, whether that's a hitter or another pitcher, that would be very beneficial for the Tigers and really just the whole outlook of next season.
Yeah, and that transitions us perfectly into our off-season wish list segment. As you said, Connor, Tariq Skubal kind of seems like the face of this team. He's the building block. He's the guy we need to lock up, and we need to start building around his timeline, which is right now. And it seems like the young hitters in this lineup are ready to start moving in that direction as well. But this team isn't losing anybody, so really their project going into the offseason is simple. It's add players. It's figure out a way, what do you need to get better? So with that being said, Connor, let's flip it right back to you. Who's your first off-season wish list player for the Tigers to try and pursue this year?
I would say all-star third baseman Nolan Arenado from the Cardinals. Man, hey, never say never now. His contract doesn't really look like a great fit on the outside right now for the Tigers. He's currently declining at bat. His numbers haven't really been what they have been to previous years, but he's still really good on defense as well. I'm just really, wondering if it would be worth the risk to, maybe bring in somebody like that. We don't have all the money in the world. I do believe that if that player specifically could help us, get over the top in a sense, then it would definitely be something that I would, be looking towards pursuing for sure.
I would really mix up the team, and I know, Brayden, you've probably heard of the rumblings that Arenado is ready to get out of St. Louis, and he's also willing to switch positions and flip corners of the infield. The guy's been a Platinum Glove winner, and I feel like a lot of people speculated that was because the Red Sox have been interested as well, and it sounded like Rafi Devers does not want to let the team move him from third base, even though the team has paid him, and it's really, I would say, more up to them now than him. But hey, if the Tigers are able to get in on those trade talks, that would be insane. I know, Alex Bregman is another third baseman they've been linked to. I'm not sure if we're going to talk more about him this episode, but that would be huge for the Tigers infield. Brayden, what are you thinking about that, and then who's your first guy on the wish list?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the Arenado stuff. My only fear with Arenado is depending on how much, obviously, the Cardinals would want for him, if they're willing to eat half of that contract, then to bring him in to be just another right-handed bat in the lineup that's obviously very, very lefty-heavy, to add some right-handed infield depth, I think that would be huge. That being said, even from like a Red Sox standpoint, as far as Arenado goes, I don't necessarily see the appeal for the Red Sox to bring him in to go and play first base. They have Dalbec there, and I would say that Arenado's his whole career, his main appeal. I mean, he's a good hitter, but his bat is declining, like Connor said, and I think his main appeal is as a defender. So if he is to come to Detroit, I mean, you would want him to play third every day, obviously, and that's kind of why I don't think he really makes sense in Boston. They have guys in the minors, a couple that are maybe ready to go, but I'm thinking a right-handed bat from San Diego. He's had a 7 WAR this last year, and he's been linked to the Tigers as well. So I'm going to say Ha-Seong Kim. He can play second, short, and third, which is, I think, goes a long way as far as what AJ wants to be able to do with the infield. Obviously, Jace Young, he can play third and second base, and then you have Colt, who's locked up on that Brave-style contract that they signed him to before he debuted last season. He, down the stretch was one of our better hitters in the lineup, and I think he's got second base probably locked up. But, if Javi's not going to come back strong, I think it would be a good move on their part to maybe move on from him and add other right-handed infield depth. Look elsewhere. Obviously, they have Vierling, and Trey Sweeney's a left-handed hitter playing short. But if they could find a right-handed platoon for Sweeney, who they could also play at different positions in the infield, I think that is what AJ and the front office are looking for. And so I think that's why they have been tied to Kim, and I do think they will sign him. I think they'll get him for 2 to 3 years, probably 12 to 14 million. If it's a longer contract, then probably on the lower side, probably 12. But if it's a 1-2 year deal, I'd be willing to guess that whatever team signs him, he's going to net 14 to 16 probably. He's been linked to the Dodgers as well. But yeah, I think he's a Detroit Tiger.
Yeah, that would as well. We've been talking about the infielders so far on the wish list. I think that is one of the biggest pieces that the Tigers need. I was looking at their 2025 Fangraphs outlook. Right now, their infield is projected to have Torkelson at first, Colt Keith at second, Jace Young at third, and Trey Sweeney at short. So to keep on the trend, I have an infielder on my list as well. It wasn't Ha-Seong Kim, even though I have seen the links between him and Detroit. I wanted to go a little bit bigger. So my guy is Willy Adames. I think he is the top free agent shortstop, maybe even the top free agent infielder in this whole class this season. And if the Tigers are really ready to make this push, I think Willy Adames might have to be their guy. I think Brayden's shaking his head. Maybe it gives him Javi Baez vibes, and we just don't want him to take a downward tilt. But hey, this is one guy who has been linked to the Dodgers, so I have a good background on that, and I know this is the kind of guy who looks like he could be an MLB superstar, an MVP candidate every year, just off the looks of him. He's got a great arm, a great glove at shortstop, but as a hitter, he oddly profiles as kind of that cleanup hitter, almost a 3 true outcome guy. And so that is something I think the Dodgers are good at fixing about players, that consistency level. The Tigers obviously aren't as trained and as proven in those kinds of player development areas, but A.J. Hinch is a smart man, as much as I hate to admit it. And I feel like he would have a very positive effect on Willy Adames. Plus, if you have Willy Adames playing alongside Javi Baez every day, one of them is going to get sparked to go do something because they're a little bit older. I don't know if these young guys have that same effect on Javi Baez right now because it looks like nothing can light a fire under him. But to move it back around to you, Connor, who's the next guy on your wish list, and maybe what do you think of Willy Adames to the Tigers?
I would say the next person on my wish list actually would be a first baseman from Tampa Bay, Yandy Diaz. He could be a potential option. In 2024, he averaged .281 at bat. He had 14 home runs and 65 RBIs. So I know Brayden just mentioned having Torkelson at first base, and he's a really good player as well. But I feel like, having another proven hitter who's, not too old would definitely, be another potential option to look at. I don't really believe he will be too expensive neither. So that could be another option as well.
Yeah. What are you thinking about Yandy Diaz and Willy Adames?
Well, as far as Yandy goes, I mean, he would be a little bit of a pricier option at first base in comparison to the guy that I was thinking about. Right-handed hitter, which is, I think, what they definitely need to go after. But I think maybe the front office still believes that Torkelson profiles as the first baseman of the future. I don't know if that's what I believe. That being said, I think that the move that would make a lot of sense for them is if they would went out and got a vet like Josh Bell, who's a switch hitter, just because he'll provide a lot of value off the bench, hitting from both sides. After the trade to Arizona, after Christian Walker got hurt, second half of the year, he was kind of a monster. But he was on a cheap contract with the Marlins prior to that. So I think the Tigers could get him for maybe not the same price tag. He might be worth a little bit more on the open market now, but definitely less than Yandy. As far as, he's a guy who's a higher average hitter, couple all-star appearances. But I'm a big fan of the switch hitting ability, and I know that AJ is a big fan of switch hitters as well. And then as far as Adames goes, when that type of approach has never really worked out for the Tigers in the offseason. You look at that Zimmerman contract, 4 years, $110 million all those years ago. Like, that was the worst contract ever. Zimmerman was like the worst pitcher ever when he was with the Tigers. Javi has borderline been like, he wasn't even hitting his weight last year. Like, he's actually hard to watch. If you take out the occasional, MLB Instagram dazzling play that he makes at shortstop, he's brutal to watch. There was a game last season where he returned to Wrigley Field for the first time and he got a standing ovation his first AB, and I'm pretty sure he got golden sombreroed after that. It's 4 strikeouts in a game. It was ridiculous. The guy is he's not even a league average hitter anymore. So I think that the front office would like to think that Sweeney profiles as the shortstop of the future, and that's why they'll try to add short-term infield depth instead of going out and getting a long-term expensive contract like Adames. I don't think that he's coming to Detroit. I wouldn't be disappointed, but I would be shocked if they signed him, especially after, the Alavila era is over in Detroit. And I think Scott Harris, who's president of baseball operations now, kind of understands that those types of contracts haven't worked out for Detroit in the past. And this is not the offseason to go and spend a bunch of money because it's not the free agent class to do it. You're not going to get Soto, and they're not going to go after Corbin Burns. You know what I mean? So I think or Bregman. So I think that this is the offseason to, like you guys said, it's a lot. It's the same team. So smaller pieces here and there. We'll circle it back to you, Connor, in a second. But I had a couple of ideas as far as pitching too. Just a couple things that I think rotationally that would improve them on the big league level. I don't know if AJ will go back to a traditional rotation based on how well the opener ball guy thing was working out for them. And frankly, I don't know if I want him to, because it made a lot of sense for them to do it like that, to get guys like Ty Madden and Brant Herter and younger arms who didn't even necessarily have that much success at the AAA level to come in and be successful at the big league level. That is 100% due to, obviously, I mean, Chris Fetter is a fantastic, developmental pitching coach, which I was going to get to a little later. But it has a lot to do with how AJ is able to know his players and play to their strengths.
Yeah, it surprises me, Brayden. You've been on 2 episodes now about teams that have been thoroughly traumatized by their owners and front offices with very unfortunate off-season big signings. So I understand it. I can't say I've been traumatized by the same thing myself. The Dodgers do seem to supplement their signings pretty well. But to keep it on the first base path, because that is one thing that we brought up too, I thought Rowdy Tellez was a great guy that could come in. I know there's a lot of left-handed bats in this lineup already, but if Torkelson's going to be your main guy, it seems like he's struggled being an everyday player. So if Rowdy Tellez comes in, works a little bit of that workload off of Torkelson, maybe we see him excel against those lefties even more. And Rowdy Tellez is just a veteran baller, man. It just seems like anywhere he goes, he's going to hit. He's not going to give you the most production. He's not going to be the guy at the trade deadline saying, hey, we need to go get Rowdy Tellez to be our first baseman. But he's going to be a guy who's going to be there. He's going to give you 120 games if you ask him, and he's going to be solid. But to go along with the pitching side, too, like you mentioned, Brayden, I thought Jack Flaherty might have some influence on the Tigers' rotation this offseason. Might not be him returning, but I think some guys he's had some conversations
100%.
with, like Max Fried or Walker Buehler, could be guys that are very high on these Tigers watch lists. Because it was a good point that you brought up. Who knows, maybe A.J. Hinch doesn't want to go back to a traditional rotation, but if he does, I do think those 3 guys are high on their wish lists and could fit very well in with these young starters that they have. Because right now, Fangraphs projects Jackson Jobe as the 5, and yes, that would be great if he's able to stick there all year, but with injuries and young guys being inconsistent, it's going to be good to have another guy to bet on in there. So, Connor, what are your first thoughts on the Tigers' rotation and maybe adding any big names?
I think, Connor, you might have stole one of my hot takes, but definitely Walker Buehler is somebody to watch for sure. He's a pretty good player. I know that would hurt you to lose a Dodger for sure, but I definitely think that he's a guy to look at to bring in to be in that starting rotation. I feel like he is definitely a guy that AJ could not really have to have a lot of conversations with. He's kind of just go out there and just do what you do. But and I feel like they would also just allow him to just kind of play free as well. He'd be with a different set of players, maybe some more younger guys as well. So I feel like that's definitely a guy to keep an eye out on for sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Brayden? Potentially adding another guy to take some weight off of these younger guys in the starting rotation for next year.
So yeah, I mean, if the Tigers are going to go out, and because they have rotational depth already. So before I get to the Buehler point, I will say, I mean, they have guys like Montero's ready to go again. Skubal obviously is an ace. Jobe, we'll see what happens, if he is going to make the roster as a starter or if AJ will try to ease him into it using openers and whatnot. Herter was not bad down the stretch. Ty Madden is all right. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be. I mean, his ceiling is probably he's a 4 or 5 guy. But I think that if they do go out and add a starter, like a traditional starter, it should be Walker Buehler. And for the reason that Connor said, I think that Flaherty was coming off a couple injury-riddled seasons his last couple years in St. Louis, and I mean he's even said publicly, and people always give him a lot of credit, but I mean Chris Fetter is genuinely one of the better pitching minds in all of baseball, and if not that Walker had a down year last year because he was coming back from injury, but I think Detroit would be a good place for him to go and say that he's having a good year and we're not competing up to where we thought we would be by the trade deadline, then you could move him again. Like they did with Flaherty this offseason, and they got a really solid return for him. They got a couple. I mean, Sweeney was a huge piece for them down the stretch, and they got a switch hitting catcher in the system as well. I think he's going to be a monster, hopefully. So I would like to see the Tigers go out and get Buehler. I think that they should go get him, and again, I think that they will. If they don't, I would be disappointed. But I think that they should also go and add another one of those guys as well. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with their pitching, but I also would like to say that I do trust the front office, and I do trust AJ, that if they think that they have the pieces in place to win right now, then that's the team that they're going to go with. And, I mean, like I said, you got to trust those guys because they surprised a lot of people. Not me, but surprised a lot of people with their success this season. Not me, though. I knew.
All right. Well, I think we developed a great wish list right there for the Tigers to monitor over this offseason to see if they're able to pick up any of those guys. Brayden, I could tell how passionate you are about this subject, and I'm loving it. But with that said, we're going to loosen it up a little bit. We're going to get to our rotating segment, and today, since both of you guys have a little bit of a football background, I thought we'd switch it up, maybe incorporate some of that, because obviously right now, heart of the NFL season, fantasy football playoffs are coming up. Christmas time football, you start seeing that snow on the field, it's super fun. So our game today is going to be a little backyard pick'em. I want you guys to create a lineup comprised of a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, an offensive lineman, and then 2 defensive players using only Tigers players. And it could be all time, it could be anybody. So we're going to go back and forth, snake draft. Connor, I'm giving you the first pick. So you're going to have the first choice of any Tiger all time filling out your NFL roster. Who's pick number 1?
All right, at wide receiver, I will be going with Kirk Gibson. Actually, I know you were thinking the same thing, but former wide receiver at Michigan State, very good player. Got a great opportunity to meet him in person. He's a very interesting guy, to say the least. But he was a great player for the Tigers as well, and so I would have to go with him at receiver.
Former Dodger too, Connor.
That's
legend. He hit that big home run.
That he was a former Dodger? Are you kidding me? Come on now.
Yeah. He had he was a dog, dude. He got drafted. He's 7th round pick by when they were the St. Louis Cardinals, the football team, not the baseball team. Yeah, there was a stretch there where same name. But yeah, he's a 2,300 career yard guy, about 30 career touchdowns. But that was going to be my first pick too. So, shit.
Well, now you got 2 of them. So with your snake draft, which 2 guys are you getting on the board, Brayden, here on your all-time Tigers football team?
I'm going to look like a little bit of a casual here with these couple picks, but I think these are players that Connor's going to go with, so I gotta nab him before he can. First of all, got to go with you got to get a DN to build your team around. You know what I mean? I think a guy who's about 6'4", 240, one of the greatest hitters of this generation, a guy by the name of Miguel Cabrera, would be a great fit. You put him anywhere, right end, left end. You probably play a little bit of outside backer, cover some pass for you if you needed him to. Versatile piece. So I'm going Miggy. And then at the quarterback position, I'm going with the guy who's a big body, big arm, and is known for the clutch factor, man. Justin Verlander, Guy's 6'5". He's not going to have a problem seeing down the field. And like I said, always been known for that clutch factor, performance in the playoffs. What more could you ask from a guy who's going to play QB for you?
Plus, then you might have Kate Upton as head cheerleader over on the sidelines. And that would be a pretty nice combo right there, if I had to admit. So, quarterback and 1 defender off the board now. So, Connor, you have a little bit of strategy you could play now here with some positions that Brayden hasn't filled. You have 2 picks. Who are the 2 guys you're going with?
I'm going to kind of go outside of the box here. I'm going to go defensive position, free safety. I'm going to go Torrey Hunter. Pretty, he kind of explained himself. He was a really good outfielder for the Tigers and for many teams. Obviously, in football, a safety is, the last line of defense and one of the most important positions on the field, especially on defense. And he made a lot of big plays for them over the years. And I would definitely have to say he is a safety.
He seems like a safety that might be able to reel in some of those interceptions, too. Not a guy with some brick hands out there in the secondary.
That's right. Are we adding offensive linemen or?
Yes, one O lineman for you. It's kind of like I'll tell it's like a hybrid. If we were playing like a non-full game, he's the guy who snaps the ball and goes out for the pass. He's your little center slash
I have a hybrid player right offhand. His name is Prince Fielder, I believe.
Yes.
pretty good player, I would say. Had a lot of some great years in Detroit. Played on a lot of good teams, with guys like Cabrera, Victor Martinez, Torrey Hunter, Verlander. They had some really good teams, and he's a big guy, and I feel like just kind of having him as one of the foundational pieces on that O-line, man, who's versatile, would be very very well needed.
All right. Well, I like how your team is shaping up so far. You're just leaving that one quarterback position for the end. But since Brayden, you've already filled your quarterback position with JV, who are the two guys you're going to keep continuing to fill out your roster with?
So, I mean, offensive line, obviously, one of my favorite Tigers of all time is Prince, so he was going to be one of my first choices. But I did have a backup choice as more of a random one. He didn't necessarily have a very memorable or great career with the Tigers. World Series winner in time. Kind of known for his time with the Yanks, but I'm gonna go with relief pitcher Jabba Chamberlain. Dude was about 6'3", 250. You talk about a guy who's gonna be snap the ball and go out for a pass. That's who you want right there. That's Jabba.
As soon as you said the Yankees, I knew who you were going with because I can just picture him in my head. That's hilarious.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, he looks like he's gonna play right guard. Like he's
right.
ready to go.
Who's your second pick after that?
I'm also gonna go with a safety. I think people would say, he's one of the better Tigers of all time. Not a guy who's played in recent years, but big legend, Hall of Famer. I'm going to go with Ty Cobb. He had a reputation, for lack of a better term, for kind of being a real piece of shit. What more do you want in a gritty DB? I need him to, coming downhill and taking dudes' heads off. And I mean, he was sliding to second base, spikes up. So that's what I want in my secondary.
I love it. I love the reasoning too. So, Connor, you have 3 positions left. It'll swing back around to you for your last one. But quarterback, running back, and 1 defender still on the board. Which 2 guys are you knocking off?
I am going to go at quarterback with Max Scherzer, 6'3", pitcher. He is an 8-time All-Star. Obviously had a lot of success with the Tigers. Had a great bullpen there. We had a little run there. We were probably considered one of the best bullpens, in the league, if not number 1. So I feel like, just him as a leader is definitely admirable. And, I feel like he's definitely one of the glue guys that we've had in the past for sure. But use him at quarterback. I still have a running back, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to go with J.D. Martinez at running back. Kind of an underrated guy, man. I feel like, I'm not sure what year it was when he led the league in home runs. But I feel like he's kind of just been a guy that's kind of like, like we were discussing about Jared Goff previous to the show, kind of, I don't want to say undervalued, but maybe overlooked a little bit. And, I feel like the running back position, especially in the NFL, is definitely overlooked. They don't really like to pay running backs a lot, and those are really the workhorses, no pun intended, to a team. And I feel like, his time here was very, very good. And he was one of my favorite players to watch for sure.
Yeah,
and then I still have one more pick, right?
Yeah, one more defender, but we'll swing it back around to you because Brayden's got 2 picks to fill out his lineup. But yeah, I like that J.D. Martinez is a little power back. If that consistency factor from the dish flips over to the running game, you have a pretty solid front, especially if you run behind Prince Fielder. What are you thinking, Brayden?
I think I only have one more pick, right? Just running back?
You got running back and wide receiver. Those are your 2.
Oh, that's right. Because I haven't picked a receiver yet.
No.
Shoot. Okay. So for running back, this is a little bit more of an obscure pull when I was doing some research for this segment specifically. But I'm going to go with the guy by the name of John Mohart. He was a 3-sport athlete in the 20s at Notre Dame, track, baseball, football.
1920.
Yes, played 5 games. Okay, played 5 games as a Detroit Tiger, 4 seasons in the NFL. His senior year at Notre Dame. Okay, because this was when forward passing. Notre Dame is the university that kind of, for people that don't, really know the history of college football. They're credited with inventing the forward pass. They're one of the first teams to kind of do some shit like that. And this dude was a running back, but in his senior year he rushed for 800 yards and he passed for 900 yards. It was ridiculous. Guy had 12 rushing touchdowns, 9 in the air at running back.
That's
and he
crazy.
played 5 years in the NFL. Yeah, crazy.
That's definitely a sneaky pick for this kind of draft right here.
Yeah,
I mean, it's much better than that.
Kind of cheap, only 5 career games as a Tiger. But when I was reading up on him, it said the outfield was all full. He played the same position as Ty Cobb. So he made the team out of spring training and knew he'd play more on the football field. Notre Dame legend, John Mohart. There you go.
That's pretty crazy. But you still have your wide receiver to fill out. So who's the last guy you're adding to your squad, Brayden?
Man, this is a tough one for me. I'm just gonna go with one. I'm gonna go with one of my favorite Tigers of all time, man. A guy who I grew up watching fly around the outfield. One of the better trades in Tiger history brought this guy into town. They moved on from Kirk Gibson. Austin Jackson, man. I mean, you talk about a guy who was just fun to watch at the top of the lineup and a fun defender to watch. Like I said, one of my favorite players growing up. Bigger body and obviously, good defender in the outfield would hopefully translate to good hands out there. So I'm going to go with Austin Jackson at the wide receiver position.
Great pick.
That's my guy.
Oh, I just realized I was muted that whole time. That fills out Brayden's team. He's got the quarterback Verlander, the two-way running back, Austin Jackson at wide receiver, Joba Chamberlain manning the offensive line, and then he's got Miguel Cabrera coming at you at the D end, and Ty Cobb is his secondary. So that leads it over to you, Connor. Your team's looking like Scherzer at the helm, your QB. J.D. Martinez is taking those handoffs. Kirk Gibson is your wide receiver. You got Prince Fielder as your O-lineman. Torrey Hunter as a safety, so you got one more defender. Who's rounding out the lineup?
I am going to go with Alan Trammell, former shortstop for the Detroit Tigers. He played 20-year career in the majors, all with the Tigers. Pretty outstanding player. He hit 185 home runs in his career. He had a batting average of .285. He's a pretty solid guy. Another glue guy, I would say. Somebody that you might not first think when you're thinking of great Tigers players, but from when I was a kid, I definitely was made aware of how good he was. My grandfather used to really like watching him play. He was just a really, really good foundational piece to some of those really good Tigers teams that they had back in the day.
100%. Say, man, with Trammell on that team, you should have gone with Lou. Those two guys up the middle back in the day were shit. Back in that '84 team. That's the last time the Tigers took one home, but. You can put it on the back of a couple guys like Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker, man, up the middle. Nothing better.
That's awesome. I love how your guys' team turned out. We'll have to throw them up on social media so people can vote. But if you're watching this live on YouTube, vote down in the comments who you think came out with the better all-time Tigers football team. New segment that we've been doing. We'll see if we bring it back for anybody else. But guys, that leads us to our finisher. We always give our fans a chance to rant about their own teams. Our outro is always comprised of an opportunity to let you spill one hot take about your own team. So, Brayden, since you've done this before, I'll let you go first. What's your one hot take about your own Tigers?
So I feel like I've been doing a lot of ranting. I've been doing a lot of yapping this episode. So I'm gonna try to keep it short and sweet. I think they're a lot better than people think they are. I think that people were shocked with them making the playoffs this year. It wasn't because they got lucky. It was because they got extremely hot at the right time because they started to figure it out and put it together. I think that they're a more dangerous contender than they're being considered. Even if they don't go out and add any huge pieces in free agency, I think that the roster they have is competitive enough to make another fairly deep playoff push this season. So I'm optimistic, and I can't wait for baseball to be back. Counting it down. No pun intended.
I like it. So swinging it over to you, Connor, what's your last, maybe hot take about your own Tigers team?
Well, Brayden, I'm going to take it a step further. I believe that the Detroit Tigers will at least make the ALCS next year. I believe it's a hot take, man. I really believe that this upcoming year that the Tigers are going to be very sure of themselves. They're going to, like I said, they're going to have those foundational pieces. Regardless if they add, any major pieces or not, I feel like A.J. Hinch is going to have those guys ready. It could be a lot of, turnover in, some of the other opponents in their division, such as the Royals or the Guardians or, any other teams. We're not going to mention the White Sox, but I definitely think that the AL is going to be way more competitive, than we expect. Obviously, there's going to be teams like the Yankees that are going to be up there. The Guardians will be up there, but I think that the Tigers are very much in the mix, and I feel like with just a little bit more consistency in the beginning of the year, towards maybe right before the All-Star break, we could definitely be moving in the right direction, and then ultimately peaking come playoff time. Definitely.
Couldn't have said it better. Well said. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Right.
They're going to win some. They're going to win some damn games.
The AL Central is up for grabs. This is a division with some emerging teams. You never know what the Guardians are going to come out with. The Royals seem like they're building in the right direction. Same thing with the Tigers. We're not going to mention the White Sox still. But, I mean, hey, my one hot take would just be that I still hate A.J. Hinch. I can't get over the cheating in the World Series. I know I'm not a Tigers fan, so I'm sure nobody in Detroit shares that perspective. But, man, I still hate this guy. I hate to admit, he's not Tom Brady by any means, but he's comparable to that. It's like, man, I respect him. He knows what he's doing. He's good at his job, but I hate watching him succeed at this point. So,
as a Dodger fan too, I understand it. I do. I mean, you'd like to think that AJ stole some wins from you. You know.
Thank you for being the only fan to ever show a Dodger fan sympathy. So
I would personally like to think that you don't deserve any sympathy, and because you're going to get Roki this offseason, and you're going to have him and Yamamoto and Ohtani, and probably win another one, and then probably win another one after that, and then just keep spending unlimited money. But, you know, I mean, there's always hope that somebody will cheat and beat them stealing signs in the playoffs. So
That's right.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. The state of Michigan is very known for stealing signs, so.
Really.
yes, sir. Well, hey, talking a little bit about the Dodgers, that was our last episode. If you haven't checked it out, there's 5 fully recorded episodes all up on YouTube and Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. So go check those out and make sure to like and subscribe so you're not missing any of the countdown action, as we are always counting it down to MLB Opening Day 2025. But guys, can you throw out your socials just real fast? Brayden, I know you threw the team Insta last time, but yeah, where can people find you guys on Instagram if they want to go give you a follow?
Go ahead, Connor.
So my Instagram is going to be CONN.1ONG, which is con.long, but with the one. So you guys can go ahead and follow me, and I'll follow you guys right back.
Yes, sir. And then Brayden, any new news with the squad?
No, you know, just been grinding. We've been in the lab. We're inside. It's real cold over here in Allendale, Michigan. A lot of snow. So we got practice tonight at 7:30 until 9:30. So gonna go in, you know, get the old arm loose, maybe throw a bullpen, probably hit some ground balls. But yeah, social media, you can find me. Just my name at Brayden Pease, and then the GVSU Club Baseball Instagram. I'm also running that as well. So if you want to follow. Our guys, you know, I think we're going to make a good push this year. Hopefully, win our conference again and make a push to that NCBA World Series. So if you want to follow us on our run, that'll be the way to do it.
Love it. Love hearing it. Everybody go shoot those guys with some follows. I will make sure to bring them back just in case the Tigers make any big splashes this offseason. But that concludes episode 6 of our Tigers Countdown. Thank you for counting down with us, and we will see you next time.